Hey guys, I want to take this video log to talk about a topic I get asked a lot of, and that is, what do you prefer, powerlifting or bodybuilding? I've done both. I competed in both at a very high level in natural bodybuilding. I placed top 5 at all my natural pro shows that I competed in, and won the heavyweight division at the IFPA Pro International in 2010. And I placed 5th at the Orton Cup Pro World Championships in the heavyweight division. So I've done well there. And then obviously, two-time USA national champion and silver medalist at Worlds in 2015 in powerlifting. So have been fortunate enough to do really well in both sports. And people ask, what are the, which one do you prefer? And before I get to that, I think we should break down like what I think are the positives and negatives of each. Now, the positives of bodybuilding, it really is a rewarding feeling because it envelops so much of your life. Like just the diligent planning of meals and structure it requires, and just kind of like the fatiguing level of focus that it requires makes it very, very rewarding. And then also, like, let's be real, it's just cool to look shredded. Like that's cool. That's really, really cool. I mean, it's, there's nothing like waking up in the morning and you see a few new lines or striations or more vascularity. So that's a really cool aspect of it, is the visual aspect. It's almost like, people say like a sculptor creating a sculpture, and I can definitely get with that. Like it's in the off season, you're building up, and you really, it's hard to tell if you're making gains because you have body fat with that. And so like when you're dieting down for a contest, really seeing that difference is pretty sweet. The upside to powerlifting, or I'm sorry, we'll go through the downsides of bodybuilding first. Downsides, obviously, dieting. Dieting sucks no matter how you slice it, even with flexible dieting. But that I can get over. The hunger sucks, but more so than anything, just like the level of fatigue to get lean enough. And for some people maybe it's not so bad, but for me to get lean enough to compete, I basically got to the point where I had no energy to do almost anything all day. I can remember sitting on the couch and having the remote control be like 5 feet away from me, and not liking the show that was on TV, but not being willing to go grab the remote to change it because I just did not feel like putting in the effort to grab the remote. I was that tired. And so like training at a certain point becomes more of a chore than it does a passion for me. And I hate that because I love to train. More than anything, I love to train. Anybody who's been around me knows how I am when I go in to train. Like, it is the highlight of my day pretty much every day. I love to train hard. That's why being injured really takes it out of me. Not because I care about, obviously, yeah, I look a little bit different, don't look as good, lose some muscle, gain some fat, but all that stuff changes. I just love to train, and that's the big thing. So for it to become laborious and almost uninspired is really tough. And the other thing too is just at a certain point, prep consumes your life. We get what you call prep brain, where everything is about prep. Like prep. Paul Ravella is like one of the most laid back dudes and my best friend. And even he in 2000, I think it was 2012 or 2011 when he did his last series of shows, like he got prep brain and all he could talk about was prep by the end. And I remember thinking, man, was I like this? And looking forward to getting my buddy back, because like I said, it just completely consumes you. It's all you think about, and for rightly so. You're putting so much effort into it. So I don't like those aspects of it. But again, if it wasn't fun, if it wasn't rewarding, I wouldn't do it. Now, powerlifting wise, what are the positives of powerlifting? Well, I love the idea of being an athlete. And, you know, bodybuilding, you can kind of argue, well, some people say, well, powerlifting, you're not an athlete because you're not athletic, you know, this sort of thing, whatever. But the fact of the matter is, you're doing something that requires skill on competition day. Now, I know posing requires skill, all that sort of stuff, but you are more showcasing. Powerlifting is actually performing. You know, if you're in really good shape for bodybuilding, there's not a whole lot you're going to do to make a big difference. But, you know, in powerlifting, if you screw up your attempts or you don't execute to the level of standard that you need to, especially in like the USAPL and IPF, you bomb out of a meet. You know, like regardless of what you've done in the gym. So I like the fact that you have to execute on competition day, that there's a real high level of skill that's required on competition day. And anybody who's never done like a USAPL Raw Nationals level or Arnold or IPF Worlds just wouldn't understand. I mean, there can be no flaws in your technique. You know, your foot moves a little bit, or your head comes up on the bench, or you don't pause long enough, or you don't listen to the commands, or you rack the weight early, or you hitch your deadlift, or you up and down it, or you got soft knees or soft shoulders at the top, like any of those, and you're going to get reds. And so it's not just about lifting the weight. And I found this out at my first Raw Nationals in Arnold when I got red lighted on my opening deadlift attempts. You have to do it and execute it on a high level. And I think that's cool. I like that. I like being pushed to have to execute on a higher level. And I can tell you, man, I've never had a feeling like it. Nationals, the Arnold, and Worlds, when it came down to the last deadlift. At Worlds, it was for the silver. But especially at the Arnold, because at the Arnold, I was tied with Ellis McLean going into the last deadlift. And I knew that if I hit it, it was over. I won. My other meets, I had somebody pulling after me to see how I was going to place. So we had thought at my first Nationals 2014, we figured I cinched it with my last pull, but Garrett Bailey still had to pull after me. And even though he was taking an enormous leap above his PR, we still had to wait for him to pull. Well, at the Arnold, nobody was pulling after me. It was me. That was it. So I remember sitting back there, backstage, waiting for my name to be called, waiting for them to say bar is loaded, and thinking, okay, we're going to find out what kind of guts you've got right now, because this is for all the marbles right here. And that was actually after I had hurt my back pretty badly a week before too. So that was very special to me. And then at Worlds, you know, pulling for the silver, that was really cool. But even not knowing what was going to happen with the lifter after me pulling for the silver, I knew that if I hit that last deadlift, I would secure at least a bronze. So I would secure a medal. So I was obviously amped up, and to execute at a high level on all three of those competitions, you know, with the judging at the highest level and with the most pressure, that's cool. It is hard to replicate that feeling when it comes down to the final deadlift, and it's either you pull it or you don't. I get pumped up just thinking about it. So downsides to powerlifting are my training sessions by the time that I'm ready for competition, they get to be really long. Because it just takes me a really long time to do all my mobility work and do all my warm-up work and do all my stretching and all that kind of stuff, and then actually getting the workouts. I mean, I had workouts that were pushing 4 hours getting ready for Worlds. So that's the real downside, is the amount of time the workouts take. Obviously, dieting's not that big of a concern. I do have to make the 205 class or the 93 kilo class, which takes a little bit of doing for me, but not a whole lot. I got to diet for a few weeks, but it's nothing crazy. And but the real downside to powerlifting for me is the injuries that you accumulate. You know, even if you do everything right, if you're lifting a lot of volume with heavy weight on major compound lifts, I mean, you're going to accumulate some injuries. Just look at people who, I mean, people would consider Mike Tuchscherer has impeccable form, and he's dealt with a whole host of injuries over the last couple of years. Now, I'm not saying this to validate that. I realize that there's things in my form I can still perfect and still work on, but people want to look at my squat where I have a little more forward lean and say, oh, well, you're going to screw yourself up. And, you know, again, you can have what people think is the normal kind of perfect technique and you're still going to accumulate injuries. It's just something that happens. And in fact, I'd say many of the top lifters in the world are just people who are really durable. People who have been able to accumulate a large amount of volume over time and not have to take long periods off of lifting. So that's the real downside, is being on the shelf, having those things accumulate. So if I had to say which one I like more, at this point in time, it's probably powerlifting, for the simple fact that I just love competing athletically on meet day, you know, coming down that last deadlift and having to pull it and having to execute on a high level. The other question I get is, will I ever do bodybuilding again? I don't know. I think so. I do think so. I do think I'll do bodybuilding again at some point. But honestly, my shelf life in powerlifting is probably shorter than my shelf life in bodybuilding. You can still lift light weights and build muscle or maintain muscle. But you know, powerlifting, there'll just become a point where it's harder to get stronger without continuously getting injured, and to accumulate enough volume without that happening. So I think it will happen. I just don't know when. And right now I just don't have the desire to do a bodybuilding show. Maybe in the future it will happen. But I'm not going to do something that I don't want to do. I'm not going to do a bodybuilding show just because I feel like people feel like I should do it, or because it'd be good for my career, or, you know, same thing for powerlifting. If I didn't want to do powerlifting, I just wouldn't do it. I don't do things I don't like to do, other than things like pay taxes or, you know, do chores, those sorts of things that I have to do. But I'm not going to opt to do something that I don't want to do and I don't find fun. Because even although bodybuilding is all those things that suck about it, at the end of the day, it was still fun for me. Otherwise, I wouldn't do it. And that's what I would have to say to you guys. I see a lot of people who compete in bodybuilding or powerlifting who complain about it constantly. And it's like, if you don't like it, then don't fucking do it. It is that simple. So I hope you guys got something out of this video. It's just my perspective on things. Feel free to disagree. You know, post some comments below about which you prefer and if you've done both. And yeah, let me hear your thoughts. I'll catch you guys next time.